Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Patanjale Namaha. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Yoga is a very vast subject, not only as a science, but it is a spiritual science and also a life system. Yoga has been dealt with in the Vedas, time unknown. The seers of the Veda mantras have propounded very well the different aspects and views of yoga and discussed well how it is possible to attain liberation by yoga. Yoga, the literal meaning of the word yoga is union. That spiritual union of the individual soul and the universal known as God. And is used in this sense in many, many places. But the well-known propounder of yoga, the traditional founder of yoga, Maharishi Patanjali, does not only accept the meaning of this word as union, but he states it is samadhi. It is realization. It is oneness with God. By stopping all the vrittis, the waves of the mind, the vibrations of the mind, which are all the time going towards the world through the senses, to stop them and to divert them. Stopping does not mean absolute stopping. It is impossible. But you have to divert them inside. The exteriority, the extrovertness has to be brought to an end. And you will have to introvert all the waves and vibrations, the thoughts of the mind towards the soul. And once it is done, the oneness of this individual with the God is samadhi. Even the Gita defines yoga as that state than which there is nothing higher or worth realizing and firmly rooted, in which a person is never shaken even by the greatest pains of this worldly life. That state, free from all pain and misery, is yoga. And that state in which you are going to experience the absolute bliss, the absolute consciousness, the absolute existence, that is yoga. According to Patanjali, yoga does not mean just union, but spiritual effort to attain perfection through the control of the body, senses and the mind. And through right discrimination between the Purusha, the soul, and the Prakriti, the nature, which is the cause of the world. Yoga is intimately allied to the Sankhya system of philosophy. But the Gita calls them one. Yoga means spiritual action and Sankhya means knowledge. Sankhya is theory, whereas yoga is practice. For all practical purposes, Sankhya and Yoga may be treated as the theoretical and the practical sides of the same system. This is what usually people think and understand and try to realize in the same way. Yoga mostly accepts the metaphysics and the epistemology of Sankhya. It shows the practical path by following which one may attain the discriminative knowledge which alone leads to liberation. Just practicing asana, pranayama, or dharana, or even meditation will not lead to liberation without knowledge. The knowledge of your own self, the knowledge of the futility, of the illusoriness of this external world, a firm discrimination from within is needed. Yoga accepts the three Pravachanas, the three ways of cognition, perception, inference, and testimony as accepted by the Sankhya system. And also the 25 metaphysical principles, the metaphysical elements that is accepted over there. But Yoga believes in God as the highest self, distinct from all other selves. Hence it is sometimes called Seshwara Sankhya or the theistic Sankhyanas, as distinct from classical Sankhyanas who are Nirishwaras or atheistics. The Yoga Sutra is divided into 4 parts in 4 chapters. The first called the Samadhi Pada, which deals with the nature and aim of concentration. The second is Sadhana Pada, which explains the means to realize the end. The third, Vibhuti Pada, deals with the supranormal powers, which can be acquired through yoga, but which are a hindrance, an obstacle in liberation. And the fourth is the Kaivalya Pada, that describes the nature of liberation and the reality of the transcendental self. Yoga has to be understood as a philosophy in different stages. To begin with, we have to understand the Patanjali Yoga systems. The very first sutra, as per the Raja Yoga, is Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Yoga is defined as the cessation of the modifications of the Chitta, the inner instrument of knowledge. The eyes, the ears, nose, tongue, skin are all the external sources of knowledge. Whereas the inner instrument, the mind, the intellect, the ego, together form the Chitta. This cessation is through meditation or concentration, which is also called Yoga Samadhi. The ego and the mind, the buddhi, that is the intellect, the 3 internal organs together is called in this sutra as, in this aphorism, as Chitta. Chitta, that is this internal organ, is the same as the Antakarana. It is Mahat or Buddhi, which includes Ahankara and Manas. According to Sankhya system, it's called as Mahat. It's called as Buddhi also. But that includes the ego and the mind together. It's called as Chitta in the first aphorism of Yoga Sutras. Chitta is the first evolute of Prakriti. It is the first evolute of the nature. It is the first effect of nature. And has the predominance of Sattva. In this, there is Sattva Guna. You know, the nature has three main important, what you call as gunas. The attributes of the nature. First is sattva, the second is the rajas, and the third is tamas. First is sattva, the second is rajas, and the third is tamas. Sattva means is all the time has got the ability to put light over the others. It is the cause of knowledge. It is the cause of knowledge. It is the cause of all good. It is the cause. It is very subtle, imperceptible. Their existence is inferred from their effects. It is the cause of pleasure, whereas rajas is the cause of pain, action, lot of hectic effort, whereas tamas is the cause of indifference, is the cause of heaviness, it is the cause for dullness. The sattva is light, rajas activity, whereas tamas is heavy. These are names. These are the philosophical terms, sattva, rajas and tamas, which has been utilized to make you realize the attributes of the nature, which is the cause, the substantial cause of the whole world. They are extremely fine and ever-changing elements. They are the factors or constituents or the elements of nature. They are called gunas, which alone is called the substantive cause, or because they are subservient to the end of the Purusha, or because they are intertwined like three strands to make up the rope. And this is the nature which binds the Purusha, having these qualities, these attributes. It is in itself unconscious. This chitta, which is the first effect or the evolute of Prakriti, the nature, even though it has the predominance of sattva, the light, but it is in itself unconscious. But being finest and nearest and dearest to the soul, it has the power to reflect the consciousness of the soul and therefore appears as if it is conscious. When it gets related to any object, it assumes the form of that object. This form, this modification of the internal organ is called as vritti. The light of consciousness which comes from the soul and illuminates this form through the internal organ is called as jnana, is called as knowledge. It is the light of consciousness. It is the light of the Purusha, the light of soul. That is knowledge. Purusha is essentially pure consciousness. The soul is pure consciousness. There is no limitations, and it is free from all the limitations of the nature. But it wrongly identifies itself with its reflection in the internal organ and appears to be undergoing change and modification. Yet this wrong understanding that has to be wiped out through yoga. It is this illusion, it is this misunderstanding that is the cause of all sorrow, all misery, and all this world. Chitta, this internal organ, therefore, is a physical medium for the manifestation of the soul. Just as in a red-hot iron ball, formless fire appears spherical and cold iron appears hot. Similarly, on account of its reflection, on account of the reflection of the light of the consciousness in the internal organ, even this soul appears changing. But chitta appears conscious. The internal organ appears conscious. just as the moon appears as moving when seen reflected in the moving waves, and waves appear as luminous. But the waves are not luminous and the moon is not moving. Similarly, the soul appears in undergoing modifications and the internal organ appears as consciousness. It is all due to the light of the consciousness reflection in the internal organ. When the soul realizes that it is completely isolated, it is non-dual, it is total bliss, and is only a passive spectator beyond the play of nature, it ceases to identify itself with its reflection in the internal organ, with the result that the light is withdrawn and the modification of the internal organ fall to the ground. This cessation of the modifications of the internal organ through meditation is called yoga. It is the return of the soul to its original perfection without any misunderstanding. The modifications of the internal organs have to be understood well. To transcend yourself and to cessate these modifications, you have to know how many types of modifications. You will have to identify them. You will have to properly recognize them so that you can go beyond them. Thus, let us now discuss the different types of modifications of the internal organ. They are the right cognition, called as pramana, wrong cognition, called as viparyaya, verbal cognition, called as vikalpa, also it is called as imagination. Fourth is the absence of cognition, that is sleep, which is called as nidra. And last is the memory, the smriti. Right cognition is of three kinds again. One is perception, it's called as pratyaksha. When the chitta, that is the internal organ, goes into the world through the sense organ, comes into contact with the external object and assumes its form, or comes into contact with the internal mental state and tries to realize whatever is there, this knowledge is called as perception. And the second type of right cognition is inference. When the internal organ cognizes the generic nature of things. For example, it sees the smoke. You see the smoke. By that you understand the route from where the smoke is coming. That point, you will surely find fire. Because wherever you see smoke, surely, if that smoke is from the right point, it is from the root, it's just the tail. You go to the beginning point of the flow of that smoke, surely you will get fire. So, by just seeing the smoke, you infer fire. Similarly here, you will have to infer many things in the philosophical world, in the spiritual world too. For that purpose, among the right cognitions, different types, the second is inference, which has been accepted as an instrument of knowledge. The third instrument of perception is verbal testimony. Shabda, that is words, having perfect meaning, told through and given through by a perfect person. The second type of the modifications of the internal organ is called as viparyaya. Viparyaya is positively wrong knowledge, like that of a rope seen as a snake. And vikalpa, that is imagination or verbal cognition, is mere verbal cognition, like that of a hare's horn. And nidra, the fourth modification, is called as absence of cognition. Yet it is a mental modification, because after sleep a person says, I have slept sound and I know nothing. And therefore, there must be some mental modification to support this absence of knowledge, the absence of external knowledge, the absence of dream. That subtle mental modification is called as nidra, the sleep. The final modification is smriti, memory. It is the recollection of the past experiences through the impression left behind by them. In fact, these modifications are the cause that we are experiencing bondage. The soul is the eternally pure and transcendental consciousness. It is internal organ with the reflection of the soul in it, or the soul as reflected in the internal organ, which is the phenomenal ego, or the individual soul, which is subject to birth and death, and transmigration, and to all painful or pleasurable experiences, and which imagines itself as the agent and the enjoyer too, as the actor. It has got the ego that I am the doer, and thus I am the enjoyer. It is this which is called as bondage. Once you realize the truth that you are neither the doer nor the enjoyer, but actually you are the absolute consciousness. It is the internal organ. It is the ego, the intellect, and the mind together, which are, due to the ignorance of its own absolute self, the source of light, the source of consciousness, the source of existence. It is the ignorance of this, that the internal organ thinks it itself to be the doer and the enjoyer of everything. But this is not true. There are 5 kinds of sufferings, which are the results of these modifications, to which it is the subject, to which the individual soul is the subject. These are ignorance, which is called as avidya, egoism, which is called as asmita, attachment, which is called as raga, aversion, which is called as dvesha, and clinging to life, and instinctive fear of death. It is called as abhidivesha. The bondage of the self is due to its wrong identification with the mental modifications, and liberation, therefore, means the end of this wrong identification through proper discrimination between the soul and the nature, and the consequent cessation of the mental modifications. It is the aim of yoga to bring about this result of practical experience. There are 5 levels of mental life. These mental modifications, which are 5 types, go through the 5 levels as and how you evolve yourself. The differences, the levels are due to the predominance of the different gunas, of the different attributes of the nature. The lowest level is called kshipta, or restless, because the mind, the internal organ here, is restless. It is due to the excess of rajas, and is tossed about like a shuttlecock between different sense objects. But the second state is called mudha, or torpid. The mind here has the predominance of tamas and tends towards ignorance, sleep, and lethargy. The third is called as vikshipta, or distracted. Here, sattva guna predominates, but rajas also asserts itself at times. Here, vikshipta does not mean extremely restless, as its name suggests, but better than kshipta. Because in kshipta, rajas predominates, but in vikshipta, sattva predominates. That means, in the restless state, it is totally restless. Whereas in this state of distractedness, here the sattva acts. The light of consciousness works more. The intelligence works more. And here it is where We all exist in this state. We have got the ability to realize the world in its original form. We have got the different capabilities to attain knowledge, to different means of our own sense organs and external physical instruments too. And the fourth state is called as ekagra, or the concentrated state, which is the higher state of sadhana, the higher state of a spiritual aspirant, of an adept yogi who has reached, who has been perfected in meditation. The mind here is entirely dominated by sattva. The rajas and the tamas are subdued to a large extent. The mind becomes concentrated on the object of meditation. The fifth and the highest level is called as niruddha, or restricted. Here the mental modifications are arrested. They are cessated. You have transited them, though their latent impressions remain. The first three levels are not at all conducive to yogic life. Only the last two are conducive to yogic life. A beginner of yoga can be put into third state, but the fourth and fifth state are of those yogis who are practicing for a long time meditation. And those are practicing just asanas and pranayama, who are not in perfected yama niyama. They don't even know what is yamas or niyamas. They're just practicing asanas and pranayamas for physical health, for beauty, to be slim, to attract their husbands or wives. Such people are not yogis. They can be put into third state. And we can say them as a beginner of yoga, because through that at least they are doing some yoga, whatever may be their aim. But still surely, one day or the other, they will realize the importance of pratyahara, introvertness. They'll realize the importance of dharana, the fixation of mind. They'll realize the importance of meditation, because concentration. And once these three have been adopted by any spiritual practitioner, by any yoga practitioner, he can be put into the fourth state, from where he develops himself. He is directing himself towards liberation. For this, Patanjali, the great Maharshi, the great expounder of Yoga Sutras, the aphorisms, has put 8 different steps, the 8 limbs of yoga, the yama, the niyamas, asana, pranayama. Asanas are postures. Pranayama is breathing. It is a control of breathing. It is not breathing exercise. There's a lot of differences between exercise and asanas, the postures, the pranayama. The yogic postures are not just physical exercises. Yoga advocates control over the body, the senses and the mind, whereas exercises just make you develop your muscles. Yoga does not want to kill the body, the mind or the senses. On the other hand, it recommends its perfection. A sound mind needs a sound body. Sensual attachment and passions distract the body as well as the mind. They must be conquered. To overcome them, yoga gives us the eightfold path of discipline. The yoga Stanga Yoga. Yama, it means abstention and includes the 5 vows of vows. It is abstention from injury through thought, word or deed. It's called as ahimsa. It's abstention from falsehood, to speak all the time truth. It's abstention from stealing. It's abstention from passion, stealing of thoughts, stealing of books, stealing of knowledge from others, without paying the necessary respect, without paying for that. you are just stealing it. One should not steal even knowledge. Stealing the worldly things is an ordinary method of stealing. It's a very low level of stealing. Actual stealers, the actual cheats, the actual thieves are those who are exploiting intellectually the others without giving nothing. Abstention from such stealing is what desired by discipline in yoga. Abstention from passions and lust, that's celibacy. And abstention from avarice, that means possessions. The more you possess things, the worldly things, the more you are entangled in them, you are trapped in them. You have to look after them day and night. You will be worried of the loss. Therefore, the less the possession, the less you are possessive of your own body, the mind and the senses. That is abstention of possessions. And the second fold discipline is niyama. It is self-culture, it is self-discipline, and it includes external and internal purification, which will be discussed later. It is contentment towards everything. Whatever you get, due to your own fate, you have to be content with that. You do work very hard, and you feel sorry, and you do say that. I work so hard, but I don't gain so much. That means you are desiring to gain more. It is a fate. It is the past actions of your past births. It is the sins and virtues of your past births which are the cause of what you are getting now. So be contented with what you are getting by God's wish. That contentment is the second self-discipline. Whereas the third is austerity. To eat at least eat less salt. To be vegetarian. To be all the time thinking of having at least a 1 day's fast every week. Less food. You are to eat food just to live, and don't live to eat food. That is tapas. And the fourth is swadhyaya. This is study, self-study, the study of the scriptures. Chanting of Om, chanting of the different mantras, the syllables. And devotion to God is Ishvara Pranidhana, the last of the self-culture's 5 disciplines. And the third fold of the 8-fold path of yoga is asana, the posture. It means a steady but comfortable posture. There are various kinds of postures which are of physical help to meditation. This is the discipline of the body. Then comes the pranayama, means control of breath, and deals with the regulation of inhalation, retention, exhalation of breath. It is beneficial to health and is highly conducive to the concentration of the mind. It must be performed under expert guidance, otherwise it may have bad after effects. It may cause even different diseases. And the 5th fold of the 8-fold path is pratyahara. It is control of the senses and consists in withdrawing the senses from their objects. To get introverted, our senses have a natural tendency to go to outward objects. They must be chucked and directed towards the internal goal. It is a process of introversion. These 5 are called external aids to yoga, while the remaining 3 which follow are called the internal aids. But certain people say only 4, the first 4, yama, niyamas and pranayama, are the external aids. And the last 3, dhyana, dharana, dhyana and samadhi, are the internal aids. while the fifth, the pratyahara, is a correction between the two, the external aids and the internal aids. The sixth, the internal aids, the first among the internal aids, and the sixth of the 8 limbs is dharana. It is fixing the mind on the object of meditation, like the tip of the nose, or the midpoint of the eyebrows, or the lotus of the heart, or the image of the deity, etc. The mind must be steadfast, like the unflickering flame of a lamp. That is dharana. The 7th step, the second of the internal aid, is dhyana. It means meditation and consists in the undisturbed flow of thought round the object of meditation. Just like the flow of oil, it is a steadfast contemplation without any break. That is dhyana. And the last samadhi, it means total absorbing yourself into your own self. It means this is the final step in yoga. Here, the mind is completely absorbed in the object of meditation. In dhyana, in meditation, the act of meditation and the object of meditation and the meditator remain separate. But here they become one. They meditate you, they meditated and the meditation. The meditator, they meditated and the meditation. All the three become one. They are absorbed into one. They dissolve into one. It is the highest means to realize the cessation of mental modifications, which is the end, which is the goal of human life. It is an ecstatic state in which the connection with the external world is broken and through which one has to pass before obtaining liberation. And even this samadhi is of 2 kinds, conscious and supraconscious. Conscious samadhi is called sampragyata and supraconscious is called asampragyata. In the former, conscious of the object of meditation possesses. In the latter, it is transcended. The former is ekagra, that is concentrated. And the latter is niruddha, the transcended. It is a former. In the former, the mind remains concentrated on the object of meditation. The meditator and the object of meditation are fused together. Yet, the consciousness of the object of meditation persists. The state is said to be also of 4 kinds. The first is savitarka, when the internal organ is concentrated on a gross object of meditation, like the tip of the nose, or the midpoint of the eyebrows, or the image of the deity, or the image of the guru, the master. It is called a savitarka samadhi. The savichara samadhi, when the mind, the internal organ, is concentrated on a subtler object of meditation, like the tanmatras, the subtle elements, the cause of this world, which are the cause of this world. On those elements, if you are able to concentrate, that is called savichara samadhi. And sananda samadhi, when the internal organ is concentrated on a still, subtler object of meditation, which produces joy, like the senses themselves, it is called as sananda samadhi. And finally, the sasmita samadhi, it is the state in which the internal organ is concentrated on the ego substance with which the self is generally identified. Here we have conscious ecstasy, whereas individuality persists. Therefore, even this is not the final state. And supra-consciousness, conscious samadhi, there's asampragya samadhi, which is called as, in the philosophical terms, is that state in which the supraconscious concentration, where the meditator and the object of meditation are completely fused together, and there is not even consciousness of the object of meditation. Here no new mental modifications arise. They are checked totally, though the latent impressions may continue. If fire is restricted to a particular fuel, it burns that fuel alone. But when that fuel has become completely burnt, the fire also dies down. Similarly, in conscious concentration, the mind is fixed on the object of meditation alone, and modification arises only in respect of this object of meditation. But in supraconscious concentration, even this modification ceases. It is the highest form of yoga, which is divine madness. Perfect mystic ecstasy, difficult to describe and more difficult to attain. Even those who attain it cannot retain it longer. Immediately or after a very short time, the body breaks and they obtain complete liberation. Yoga generates certain supranormal powers, but they should be avoided. And attention should be fixed only on liberation, which is the end of human life, which is the goal of human life. The ideal is Kaivala, the absolute independence and eternal free life of the Purusha, free from the nature, the soul. For all these things, to attain this, the best and the easiest method, as per Patanjali, is to surrender to God. Ishwar Pradhana Dva. Who is God? It realize which type of soul, which state of consciousness can be called as God. Yoga accepts the existence of God. For it is the simplest, the easiest and the best way without any risk for liberation. The interest of Patanjali himself in God seems to be practical, but the latter yogis have taken also a theoretical interest in it and have tried to prove his existence as a necessary philosophical speculation. But Patanjali defines God as a special kind of Purusha, the soul, the consciousness, which is always free from pains, actions, effects, and impressions. He is eternally free and was never bound, nor has any possibility of being bound. He is above the law of karma, the actions. He is omnipresent, He is omniscience, He is omnipotent, He is perfection incarnate. He is purest knowledge. He is the teacher of the teachers. He is the teacher of the rishis. He is the teacher of the masters, the super masters. And the teacher of the Vedas too. Do you know the symbol of God? The only symbol of God is Om. And through this Om that we can attain God. Devotion to God is one of the surest means of obtaining concentration. The proofs advanced for His existence are the way that tells us that God exists. The law of continuity tells that there must be the highest limit of knowledge and perfection, which is God. God is responsible for the association and disassociation of these individual souls with the nature. Devotion to God is the surest way of obtaining concentration and thereby liberation. But God of yoga is not the creator, preserver or destroyer of this world. He is only a special soul. He does not reward or punish the souls. Innumerable souls, individual souls and nature, all eternals and absolutes are there to limit Him. He cannot grant liberation. He can only remove the obstacles in the upward progress of the devotees. Directly, He has nothing to do with the bondage and the liberation of the individual soul. Ignorance binds and discretion between the nature and soul does liberate us. The goal of human life is not the union only with God, but only the separation of individual soul from nature. Such a conception of God is certainly, even though unsatisfactory, but helps a beginner to get through many obstacles. The yoga system of Patanjali should not be confused with magic or tantra or self-hypnotization. It's a great system of spiritual discipline and has found favor with all schools of Indian philosophy except the materialistic people called as Charvaka. It is founded on the metaphysics of Sankhya and gives us a practical path of purification and self-control in order to realize the true nature of man. Wish you all the best. Further, we'll be discussing on yoga philosophy in large in our next session. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.